Hey, everybody, welcome to today's show. So, whether you're a business owner and you're looking to attract more customers, you're competing in an overcrowded marketplace, or you're just trying to build authority in your industry, I think we can agree one challenge remains the same. How do we differentiate ourselves when everyone seems to offer a similar product, service, or expertise? And in today's digital world, visibility is easier than ever to achieve, but being remembered is a completely different challenge. So, today we're going to explore the principles of positioning, branding, and category leadership, what it takes to become the obvious choice in a crowded market, and why being different is often more important than being better. Joining us today is Laura RIES, one of the world's leading branding and positioning strategists, and her work has helped shape how companies build memorable brands and create lasting competitive advantages. Laura, welcome to the show. I'm so excited to have you here with us today.
My pleasure. Super excited to talk about positioning, my favorite topic.
So, you said something once, and it really stuck with me. You said, customers don't care about brand, that we care about categories, and that is really the strongest position to own if we are a business owner. So, can you tell me a little bit more about that? Because that was so intriguing.
Absolutely. Listen, I wrote a book called The Immutable Laws of Branding. You would think, everything should be about brand, 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 but it's not. This is the biggest thing that businesses should know. Consumers, they care about their brand. The consumer doesn't. The trick is consumers may speak in brand, but they think in category. Think about it. What's a Red Bull? Is it the brand we get so excited about? It is the can or the logo? Uh-uh. The power in Red Bull was they were the first. They pioneered a brand new category we didn't know we needed called energy drink. And being the first and the pioneer, they were the first brand in the mind, and they have then since expanded the category, and owning leadership in the category is in fact the best position to own in the mind. The basics of positioning is owning an idea in the consumer's mind. Most people use the word positioning and they use it as an umbrella to cover, these are all the great things we do. But positioning isn't about communicating out. It's about owning that idea in the mind. Sometimes that can be narrow. You've got BMW owns driving, right? The ultimate driving machine. So that was a powerful position for them. But leadership, if there's one position you want to own, it's leadership in a category. Because consumers at the end of the day, they get excited about the category, but they speak about it in the brand name. And in the long run, that brand name is, of course, incredibly important, but it's backed up by the category that it stands for.
I love that. I think that just takes something that feels very complex and it breaks it down into something simple. You mentioned BMW just a second ago, and whenever I hear ultimate driving machine, I automatically think BMW.
Of
But to
course.
me, even then, saying ultimate means better. But I've also heard you say that being better is not enough anymore. Why is that?
Well, that's true. Why? Because it's just a claim. It's you saying something about yourself. And what is that? It's not believable to the end user, right? And so having most, slogans or communications or we're better than this and that. Think about BMW. It wasn't just saying the ultimate driving machine that led to their success. It was their narrow focus on talking about driving in the first place. Well, most car companies, talked about all the benefits, and BMW was one of them. They once ran advertising that talked about their fuel efficiency and their styling. They talked about everything like everyone does. Listen, a car is an expensive purchase. You would think people care about all the things. They do. But the idea is how are you going to get that brand remembered and in the mind and to stand for something? To do that, you've got to narrow your focus. And that's what BMW did. They only talked about driving. The car, it's more, has better driving and feel, and you feel the road. Those were very important principles. And then they reinforced it with the slogan, with the advertising that they didn't just say once, they've said for over 35 years. The consistency is hugely important. And also, it was a verbalization that people can use. The best kind of slogans like this are things that someone will say to their friend. If someone asks you, why did you buy a BMW, spend all that money? Well, it's the ultimate driving machine. I mean, Ford's slogan used to be find new roads. I mean, can you imagine if someone asked you why you bought your new Ford? To find new roads. Most companies are missing the game when it comes to what positioning is, how they can apply it, and then, tactically how it goes out there in their marketing.
So, why do you think so many companies are still trying to compete on what's better when we're actually buying based on what's different? I mean, to me, driving a BMW, the way that they're positioning themselves, it's almost like you're going to undergo a transformation if you drive that car. Everything about you is going to feel different. You're going to start to feel different yourself. So, why do we see so much advertising centered around being better when we're buying on what's different?
Well, I think in some cases it feels better to the company, right? They want to boast themselves, and listen, most companies try to make a better product. There's nothing wrong with that. The problem is, will that be believed by the consumer? And it's not. Instead, what's understood much different is difference, is contrast to something else. Back to BMW, one of the biggest things about BMW, think about, they were a luxury automobile market, right? Who did they compete with? Who's the leader in luxury automobiles? Mercedes-Benz. Mercedes was the first luxury vehicle in the mind of the consumer. They dominate as the leader. But to go up against them, BMW didn't say we're better than Mercedes. They said they were different because they were the driving machine versus versus Mercedes, which was comfort. What if you've been in a Mercedes, they're like floating on the road. You don't feel the road. And so it was very strategic the way they focused in on that. And it wasn't about being better. It was in fact all about being different. And that's the key, whether it's being different by creating a new category you can be first in, like, Red Bull or Tesla in electric vehicles, or some way that you can be different. Another one is in the car auto market is Volvo. What did they do? Safety, right? And yeah, everyone added safety, but a couple things. Volvo pioneered many of the safety features we know and love today, like 3-point seat belts and airbags. They were the first. That got them what? A lot of PR, a lot of credibility, credentials, authority in that. And then they reinforced it. One of the funny things back in the day with Volvo is look at the cars themselves. They look safe, right? They look like a tank. They were not known for styling like a BMW or a Mercedes, right? It was a statement to drive a Volvo. Listen, I think the first thing after I gave birth to my first child is I looked at my husband. I said, we cannot drive this BMW. We must go and get a Volvo. And that was the mindset for many years. And their focus on safety was incredibly important. Sadly, what do many companies do? They become leaders by focusing on something like safety. And then, as Volvo famously once, one of their executives said, safety is no longer enough. No longer enough. You built a global powerhouse. What did they do? They went into convertibles. They had a racing team. They did all sorts of stuff. And it was a disaster. Now we're seeing them sort of refocus and refine their safety, power and anchor, we call it.
So, do you think that's one of the biggest mistakes that you'll see companies make is they find that category and they begin to control it, right? And we begin to associate them with it. And then all of a sudden, competitors emerge on the scene. And now we want to go after those clients as well. So we start to expand and change the way we're talking about ourselves without really understanding if that's going to bring us more business by doing so or harm the business we've already chased and acquired.
Oh, absolutely. And it's the dangers of what we call line extension, putting one brand and expanding it either into multiple categories or multiple varieties. And it is the biggest danger companies face. Listen, it sounds logical. The more things you have to sell, the more things you'll sell. It's not the reality, though. And time again, we see the disaster. Now, why do they do it? As you said, they see competition. For example, Bud Light, leader in light beer. And they attained that leadership. I mean, was a line extension from Budweiser. We can talk about that later. But in the early 2000s, Bud Light dominated light beer. But what happened was there was a lot of competition, not from other light beers. They'd already beat that, but from what? Mexican brews. We had the hard seltzers coming. We had hard iced teas. We had all these things coming. So what did Bud Light do? They said, oh my goodness. We see these competitors, we'll just expand our brand, a brand everyone knows. And they had Bud Light with lime. They had Bud Light seltzer, Bud Light hard soda, Bud Light zero, Bud Light this, that, ultra, next, what have you. It waters down the brand. When you go to a bar and say, give me a Bud Light, bartender says a Bud Light what? Right? It doesn't stand for anything anymore. That's the danger. Short term, some of those line extensions, yeah, they'll sell. People will try it for the novelty. The stores will buy it because they know your company. But long term, it's a killer because it erodes what that brand stands for in the mind. Exactly what we've seen happen over the decades with Bud Light. Bud Light today is a loser in terms of standing for something, owning. They can't even, talk about their category because they're into so many things and don't stand for anything. And that, very much the danger for companies to think about once they attain that success, what do you do next? Now, here's the thing. It's not the end of the road. If, your category is going down and you face competition, there's an easy answer to this. Mike's Hard Lemonade faced this just exactly. Hard lemonade took off like crazy, but then we all realized what? This stuff has a lot of sugar, more than a Coke. It also has a lot of calories. Certainly they could have line extended, and they did into, diet versions, but they also then thought, what if we create a new category? And they did. Maybe you've heard of it. White Claw, the first hard seltzer in the mind. What was that? A second brand. Now they have two brands. Some people like hard lemonade. There's a time and place for that. But now today, all the young 20-somethings, my sons included, are drinking the claws, right? White Claw dominates because they launched a new category. The big successful companies do just that. Think about why is the Gap company so successful today? Because they launched Old Navy. Old Navy was a powerful second brand. It went at the lower end, affordable fashion. It allowed each brand to have their own identity. Of course, Gap lost its way, but they're regaining their focus, right, on that, kind of basic styling and Americana. And that's been a terrific event for them.
Wow, that is absolutely mind-blowing. First of all, I didn't realize that White Claw came from Mike's Hard Lemonade. And I actually am hearing White Claw show up in country music. The artist's name is escaping me, but there's a very specific line in a song that talks about a girl drinking a White Claw. I don't like them myself.
That is the true sign of success when you are in. I think Applebee's had a very moment in a song, but yeah, when you have made it, when you're being referred to in a song, because it means something. It isn't just a brand. Think about it. Because it's not a brand. To people, it's the stuff in the can. I mean, that's a White Claw, right? It's not the logo. It's not the trademark. It's the actual can of stuff. And the danger is, when you put line extend, then people say, oh, that's just a brand name. It doesn't really mean anything. You want, in fact, that word to become synonymous with the product, with the category, give me a claw, to mean something. That is, the big opportunity. And here's the good news. It's amazing. Just when we think everything has been thought of in the world, out comes something new. Who knew there could be another water brand? Yet here comes Liquid Death. It's just water, same kind of water as everybody else, but they put it in an aluminum can and they gave it outrageous marketing, right? Liquid Death to get our attention, but to get our attention to a really important message, because it wasn't just about being crazy. It was about the can, about saying no to something, and that was plastic bottles. They're cheap, they're easy, but they are killing our environment. Aluminum is infinitely recyclable. I think over 80-something% of aluminum ever in the world put into the world is still here because we recycle it. So it had a really strong message and a really strong enemy they went against. Don't kill the world with plastic. Death to plastic is, in fact, what they said, and drink liquid death. They also targeted in and contributed to this rising craze of people not drinking alcohol at concerts. That was one of the first places, they went after so that people could still be whole. And that was the inspiration, in fact, for the brand itself, that the musicians on stage, they didn't want to drink energy drinks and alcoholic drinks. They just wanted water, but they needed it in a cool can. They were refilling their monster cans with water. So liquid death gave people to be at, Lollapalooza or wherever they are. They want to be sober, but they want to be hydrated and they want to look cool. And putting all those things together, gave people an opportunity to also make a statement because it says something if you're drinking liquid death. You don't want to, have energy drinks or alcohol. And it really become a movement, not just a brand.
That's so interesting. I love that their differentiator is we've got great water, but we're doing something for the planet while bringing you a great product. And we're standing out first because of our name, second because of what we're putting our product inside of, and really making a much larger statement. That's
Absolutely.
fantastic.
It's fascinating because listen, I mean, I've got some Evian here. Evian can come out with an aluminum can. Maybe they probably have. But how are then they going to stand for the movement of saying death to plastic when they create a ton of plastic for their waters? They can't. Only when you have a true focus can you then leverage that power to truly stand for something, to truly stand against something, and to get people involved in some sort of movement about your product, your category, all of these exciting things. And people, I think, really, they're looking for that. They resonate to that. And they're willing to take that on and to, rally your cause if you give them something to rally for.
So, what's our first step that we can take if we were going to take one step by tomorrow to begin to think about category and differentiation? What would be the one thing that you would advise everybody to consider immediately?
Sure. Well, I've been in a lot of meetings and I worked with a lot of companies, and they're always thinking about what can we do and what more can we do, right? That's always the focus. Instead, the first step I think they should do is what can we say no to? What do we not want to do? What customers do we not want to go after? That can be very, very effective in helping you find your focus and how you can be different. I live here in Atlanta, home of Chick-fil-A. What did they say no to? Burgers, right? They were the first chicken sandwich place, but listen, many places offer everything. Burger sandwich, they want to appeal to what? Everybody, not Chick-fil-A. They were the first sandwich, and that's all they do. That also, you get pretty good at what you do if that's all you do. But they made a big case of just being about the chicken. They also said no to being open on Sundays. As a company, they wanted, followed the philosophy. They wanted to give their employees the day of Sunday off. And that has become kind of lore about the company. In fact, my son was an addict, basically, of Chick-fil-A. I mean, we would get so paranoid. We go twice on Saturday. I mean, are they losing business? I don't know. I don't think so because, people, they make a thing of it. But really, the big no was no burgers. And of course, we all know the iconic advertising, been around for decades, with the cows saying, eat more chicken. You can't have an exciting idea like that unless you say no to something. I mean, what did Salesforce do? They said no to software. Right? See, most companies think, this something is just taking off. We'll try to, hedge our bets and be a little of this, little of that. That's not going to lead you to build a strong positioning. You got to be bold. You got to be courageous. And you got to be willing to be first and go out there to build the category in the mind. Go into a place where people don't know what it is. Now, you also have to be patient. Listen, Red Bull took 10 years to reach $100 million. It takes time, but that's good for entrepreneurs. Why? Big companies ignore them. Coca-Cola sat on the sidelines for years. They figured energy drink was a niche market. The major automotive companies, They thought Tesla was a niche market, right? They all waited and they let Red Bull and Tesla and others build a strong brand in the mind. And that was, the end result that allows those brands to be so powerfully and successful today. So, even if you're a small entrepreneur, you have big opportunities when you can launch that new category and have all of your elements from the name to the visual to the communication and everything working together.
So, how do you think a small business, because there's so many small businesses in this country. In fact, I really feel like small business is really the backbone of this country. And
Yes.
right now, we're talking so much about being a business owner, right along the same, time as America's 250th birthday. In fact, we're celebrating that.
Yeah.
How can a small business compete against a larger, better funded competitor when perhaps maybe their marketing budget is less or their advertising budget is less? What do you recommend in that case?
Well, first of all, if you have the opportunity to pioneer a new category, this has tremendous news value, right? You have something to go out there and talk for people to have word of mouth, for the media to have word of mouth, for social media, all of these things. But it takes something very critical that every small business usually has. A founder, right? A founder who can be the spokesperson. And you see, I mean, look, Papa John's building Papa John's, Sarah Blakely building Spanx, the first originally footless pantyhose. Fantastic idea. But it was her ability to talk about this, to bring it to all of us, to have the full story, to have her face, to hear her talk to the media, to be in stores, all these things working together. So, very, very important that founders take that as a big part of their job. They are the number one spokesperson for the brand. Or even big companies, it's important too. I mean, think about Jensen Huang at NVIDIA, big part of the success of his ability to be the spokesperson for the brand. But to get off the ground, it is a crucial element. And you look back and you see the famous entrepreneurs who are, well remembered for the brands they founded.
So, your newest work focuses on the strategic enemy. And I feel like a lot of what you just talked about is going to be featured in here. So, share with us more about what we can expect from this read, because I feel like this is going to be a very insightful and also exciting read if we are working on building a business.
Yeah, absolutely. And, in the first part of the book, I do cover all these, principles and of the basics of positioning and the importance of category, because they play an incredibly important role. But here's the key insight of the book. Listen, my father, if you don't know the story, my father is Al Rees, and he and Jack Trout, came up with this concept of positioning and wrote a very famous book called Positioning that was published in 1981. But the idea was around in the 70s. And is a big controversy of using positioning versus using creativity in your advertising. But positioning is well known as a concept, not always well followed to the rules of it. But it's getting harder than ever. The funny thing of the original book is it was written on the premise that, oh my goodness, we live in such an over-communicated society. It's harder than ever for anyone to pay attention to our brands. Well, look at what we have now, right? It's insanity out there. How are you going to cut through the clutter? Now, of course, narrowing the focus, pioneering a category, doing all these things is still incredibly important, as it was in the 70s and 80s. But with the onslaught of what's going on around us, the key insight here is it's not just what our position is what are we positioning against? And that's your strategic enemy. And we talked about in many of the examples just now, I mean, think about Liquid Death. Their concept of the positioning was, yes, it was water in cans, but it was going against plastic bottles. Halo Top, if you know this brand, eat the whole pint, right? It was a low-calorie frozen dessert. It wasn't just talking about that, but it was eat the whole pint. And Halo Top, the brand name, went right along with it, pioneer in that area. And Chick-fil-A, a classic example of thinking about who their strategic enemy is. And then how do we, differentiate very strongly and clearly and visually against it. So that's really important. What I want people to understand that in their positioning, they also should, identify who that strategic enemy is. Now, listen. It could be another company, right? Pepsi's strategic enemy is Coke, but it could also be a concept. It could be another category itself, and so there's the understanding of how all of these things play. But at the end of the day, keeping your team focused on how to build the most powerful positioning strategy.
So, if we are already in business and we feel like we have selected a category, but it's not working for us, what
Yeah,
would be those first three things that
perfect.
we would want to rethink? And you've touched on all of them, but I'd love it if you just sum that up for us to give us those quick action steps.
Yeah, and the best way to understand and why, all of our books and speeches are filled with examples by seeing how it's done out there, right? Not just the theory, but how does it actually work? What do you mean a strategic enemy? Think about farmer's dog. This is fresh food for dog. And for most companies, let's just talk about how great it is, how fresh it is. And that's initially what they did. That doesn't always get traction because people are what? They're doing something now already. You've got to get them to change that behavior. So it's not just about saying why, what's in your product, all these things. The key insight here is who's your strategic enemy? For farmer's dog, think about it. What did most people feed their dog? High quality dry dog food. That's what I fed my dog. So what they did in their marketing was said, who's our strategic enemy? It's dry dog food. And not only that, they said, what is dry dog food? Burnt brown balls. This is highly processed. That's how they make the dry food. And so they set up the contrast to here's your choice, consumer, dog lover. Feed your dog burnt brown balls for every meal of their life, highly processed food, or our fresh, lightly cooked food for your dogs. And the end benefit is longevity for your dog. But in order to get that credibility of that message, you first have to reposition what dry dog food is. And giving it the burnt brown balls is just one of my favorite examples ever. But it has really changed slowly the mindset of pet owners to see what is healthy for their dog. Because we know as people, if you ate, highly processed food 3 meals a day for your entire life, you you definitely probably wouldn't live that long. So the same thing now, the mindset has changed for our animals. Even another thing is, think about your brand. Even if you have an exciting new category, it also needs a good brand name and it needs the right positioning and strategy to communicate it. A slightly moistened toilet paper has been around a long time. Charmin had fresh white line extension in the early 2000s. None of us bought it. It was poorly communicated. It was an add-on with a contraption on your toilet paper. Why? Because their business was selling toilet paper. They didn't want to poo-poo their main product. But when a guy was living with his guy friends out after college, realized he was stocking up after eating burritos and a lot of beer, was stocking up on baby wipes to clean up in the bathroom. He said, "There's a missed opportunity here. There is no product marketed to me and my friends that can do the job we need to get done." So he launched Dude Wipes. Brilliant marketing. He took a category was out there, but positioned it properly with a strong brand name, strong positioning. He's a fantastic spokesperson, and a clear strategic enemy. Toilet paper just doesn't cut it. Send toilet paper back to the Stone Ages. And my favorite, it smears, it clears for Dude Wipes. I mean, very, very simple. But can you simplify whatever it is you're selling into one of these, very simple binary type choices? It's not saying about, the enemy is wrong, terrible, necessarily, but it's different. And, as a woman, I can use the toilet paper for, a number one business, but, we all need a Dude Wipes for the number two. It didn't, in fact, actually limit their market at all. So thinking about these things, how can we oversimplify what it is we're doing, what it is we're selling, so that we can get the right brand name, the right message that people will talk to about, and get them, motivated to rally for whatever cause it is, whether it's, toilet paper wipes to, cloud software, to safety in vehicles. It spans every different kind of market, category, business, and brand.
Laura, thanks so much for joining us today. This has been such a fun and hugely enlightening conversation. And I really appreciate all of the insights that you've given us, things that we can think about, need to be thinking about in our own business. These are fantastic. So help everybody who's listening right now connect to you. How can we find you on LinkedIn, social, and on your website?
Yeah, I am everywhere. So main place you can go is just Reese.com, which is my last name, RIES. But absolutely, I'm on LinkedIn. You go to Reese.news, got the Substack with videos. I've got my Reese, my hotline where people actually fake companies call and I do videos giving them positioning advice. But please go reach out, follow, check out the books. But most importantly, get your positioning right. Don't forget to differentiate, find your strategic enemy, and always narrow the focus.
Thanks so much, Laura. And until next time, everybody.